Inhabitants of the Astral. Shadows of the Astral realm. The metropolis sprawled like a colossal labyrinth of concrete sinews and steel bones, pulsating with the relentless heartbeat of millions ensnared within its grasp. New Arcadia didn't just occupy the landscape. It devoured it, a voracious beast whose skyscrapers clawed ferociously at the heavens, their sheer magnitude eclipsing the very sun. Below, the streets morphed into shadowed chasms where light dared not tread, save for the incessant flicker of neon hieroglyphs and the feeble glimmer of stars suffocated by an eternal haze. The architecture loomed oppressive, a monolithic testament to humanity's insatiable ambition and blatant disregard for the sanctity of open spaces. Buildings didn't just stand. They towered menacingly, their cold facades pressing down upon the scurrying masses who darted like inconsequential ants beneath their disdainful gaze. In this urban leviathan, the denizens moved with a frenetic urgency, a ceaseless, aimless hustle that etched deep lines of fatigue and existential dread upon their faces. Eyes dulled by the monotonous grind stared vacantly ahead, individuality drowned in the overwhelming tide of metropolitan anonymity. Amidst this sea of faceless souls drifted Evelyn Bennett, a woman of 25 summers, whose existence was as subtle and easily overlooked as a solitary whisper swallowed by a raging tempest. Evelyn dwelled high above the teeming streets on the 22nd floor of a once majestic Art Deco relic, now a decaying specter wedged incongruously between impersonal office monoliths. The building, a fading echo of bygone grandeur, bore the scars of time and neglect, its eroded elegance a silent lament to forgotten eras. In solitude, she inhabited a modest haven, shared only with Whiskers, her aloof tabby whose silent companionship offered a balm to the wounds of isolation. Her apartment was a cluttered sanctuary, a living room overflowing with time-worn furniture bearing the imprints of countless unknown lives, a kitchenette where chipped countertops whispered tales of better days, and a bedroom that served as her intimate refuge. Here, books were not mere objects but companions. Strewn across every surface, their pages dog-eared and weary from her voracious exploration of distant worlds and esoteric realms. Nights found her ensconced in the embrace of her threadbare sofa, cradling a cup of chamomile tea, her mind adrift amidst treatises on astral projection and the enigmas of the subconscious. Evelyn's existence wove itself into a tapestry of meticulous routines, a life measured by the clatter of keystrokes and the crimson trails of editorial correction. As a remote copy editor for a publishing house, her days blurred into a continuum of solitary labor. The cacophony of the city beyond her walls was a world she seldom ventured into. Its oppressive crowds and suffocating structures ignited a claustrophobic dread that stole the breath from her lungs. Within the quietude of her apartment, she found the space to exist unencumbered by the relentless weight of the world outside. Yet, on one fateful night, wearied by the draining demands of her toil, Evelyn sought the solace of an early slumber. The nocturnal symphony of New Arcadia, a discordant blend of distant sirens, the perpetual hum of ceaseless traffic, and the faint echoes of nocturnal revelry, filtered through her window. With a decisive pull, she drew the heavy curtains, severing the tenuous connection to the world beyond. Clad in her favorite lavender nightgown, she embarked on her evening rituals. The soft glow of a sandalwood candle flickering to life, the methodical strokes of brushing her long auburn tresses, and the scribbling of fragmented musings into her well-worn journal. As she nestled into the embrace of her bed, Whiskers leapt gracefully onto the mattress, curling into a warm ball of fur beside her. The rhythmic cadence of his purring wove a lullaby that eased the tensions coiled within her. Allowing her eyes to close, Evelyn surrendered herself to the gentle currents that would ferry her away from the stark confines of reality. But in the nebulous hours where night edged imperceptibly toward dawn, an uncanny stillness seeped into her awareness. The familiar ambient noises of the city had dimmed, replaced by a silence so profound it resonated within her very being. Opening her eyes, she expected the comforting shadows of her bedroom. Instead, she found herself enveloped in a soft, iridescent luminescence that defied reason. The walls around her shimmered as if woven from liquid light, their surfaces alive with pulsating hues that transcended the spectrum of known colors. Objects floated ever so slightly, untethered from the laws of physics, suspended in a state of ethereal grace. The air itself was dense with a luminescent mist, a living entity that seemed to breathe in tandem with her own breaths. Rising cautiously, Evelyn noticed that every movement left a trail of sparkling motes that lingered momentarily before fading into the ambient glow. "Is this a dream?" she murmured, her voice echoing in the expansive space that her room had impossibly become. Her feet met the floor, or what should have been the floor, but it yielded beneath her like the surface of a tranquil pond, cool and fluid yet supporting her weight. Each step propelled her forward with an effortless glide. Reaching out, her hand passed through the solidity of her dresser as though it were crafted from the very mist that surrounded her. Could this be the astral plane? The thought reverberated within her, a thrilling and terrifying possibility. All her studies, the countless hours poring over mystical texts, had spoken of such experiences, a realm where consciousness roamed free from corporeal bounds. Yet no scholarly description could capture the transcendent beauty that unfolded before her eyes. Approaching the window, she gazed upon a city transformed. The rigid geometry of New Arcadia had yielded to surrealistic forms. Skyscrapers twisted into impossible spirals, bridges arched skyward connecting realms unseen, and the heavens danced with stars that sang in chromatic harmonies. But as wonder threatened to overwhelm her, a dissonance intruded, a subtle shift that tainted the vibrant tableau. Colors dulled, the buoyant air grew heavy, and a low-frequency hum began to vibrate through the fabric of this reality, unsettling and discordant. The luminescent mist thickened ominously, coalescing into shadowed tendrils that slithered at the periphery of her vision. A creaking sound, sharp and intrusive, shattered the silence, the unmistakable timbre of a door groaning open. Whipping around, Evelyn's gaze locked onto her bedroom door, now ajar despite her certainty that it had been closed. Beyond the threshold yawned an abyssal darkness, a void that seemed to swallow the very light around it. "Hello?" Her voice quavered, barely piercing the oppressive quiet. Silence answered, an all-consuming, smothering silence that pressed in upon her. She willed herself to move toward the door, but her body resisted. It was as if she had been ensnared by invisible restraints. Panic surged, a wild thing clawing at her composure. She struggled against the unseen bonds, every effort rendered sluggish and ineffectual. From the depths of the darkness, a figure materialized, gliding forward with unnerving grace. Draped in robes woven from shadows darker than night, it absorbed all light, an antithesis to the luminescence that had bathed the room moments before. The hood obscured any hint of a face. Within its depths lurked an emptiness that drew her gaze into an infinite abyss. Evelyn's heart thundered in her chest, a primal fear igniting every nerve. She wanted to scream, to flee, but terror held her captive. The entity halted before her, an overwhelming presence that exuded a chill seeping deep into her marrow. An intangible probing sensation washed over her, as though tendrils of thought reached out, sifting through the layers of her psyche, unearthing secrets and vulnerabilities she had long buried. "Who are you?" The question fell from her lips, a fragile plea hanging in the void. No reply came. Instead, a skeletal hand emerged from the swaths of darkness, fingers elongated beyond natural limits, reaching toward her with deliberate intent. As the hand advanced, a tidal wave of despair crashed over her. Visions of isolation, echoes of suppressed fears, the suffocating weight of her own solitude engulfed her consciousness. Tears cascaded down her cheeks, the emotional onslaught stripping away her defenses. The entity's ethereal grasp closed around her throat, not constricting flesh and bone, but stifling the very essence of her being. Her vitality ebbed, consciousness flickering precariously like a candle besieged by tempestuous winds. "Please no." The words were barely more than a breath, her strength waning. From the depths of her despair, a spark ignited, a stubborn ember of defiance refusing to be extinguished. Mustering every fragment of will, Evelyn focused inward, envisioning a radiant light blossoming from her core. The illumination grew, a burgeoning force pushing against the encroaching darkness. The entity recoiled as the light intensified, its grip faltering. Sensing the shift, she poured all her remaining energy into this inner radiance, the brilliance swelling until it consumed everything in a blinding flash. With a gasp, Evelyn jolted upright in her bed, her body trembling and slick with perspiration. The familiar confines of her room greeted her, the muted glow of the nightlight casting comforting shadows, the distant murmur of the city reasserting its presence. Whiskers stirred beside her, lifting a sleepy head before settling back into slumber. "What was that?" she whispered, her voice raw. The digital clock glared 3:33 a.m., a time steeped in superstition. A shiver coursed through her at the implications. "Just a nightmare," she attempted to reassure herself, yet the conviction faltered. The vividness of the experience defied dismissal. Every sensation lingered with uncanny clarity. It transcended the realm of dreams. Rising from the tangled sheets, Evelyn sought solace in action. Feet firmly planted on the cool floorboards, she drew in measured breaths, the practiced rhythm easing the cacophony of her thoughts. Her gaze drifted to the collection of arcane literature adorning her shelves, the knowledge she had so eagerly sought now casting long, enigmatic shadows. Had her relentless pursuit of the unseen opened a door she was ill-prepared to walk through? The possibility gnawed at her. Perhaps the entity was not a mere figment, but a harbinger, an echo from the depths of the very realms she had yearned to explore. Determination hardened within her. Ignorance would offer no protection. Understanding was her only recourse. Seated at her desk, she began to write, the pen scrawling fervently across the pages of her journal. She chronicled every detail, the sensations, the environment, the confrontation. The act of writing wove threads of coherence through the chaotic tapestry of her experience. As dawn's first light seeped into the sky, painting her room with hues of soft gold, exhaustion tugged at her, yet a resolute clarity had taken root. "Knowledge is power," she murmured, a mantra and a vow. In the ensuing days, Evelyn delved deep into research, traversing the labyrinthine corridors of occult knowledge and metaphysical discourse. She reached out across digital planes to communities versed in the esoteric. Responses ranged from skeptical dismissal to profound insight. One message resonated, a cryptic missive from a user named Seraphim. "The deepest shadows are cast by the brightest light within us." Contemplation of these words stirred a revelation. Could the entity be a manifestation of her own internal shadows, the embodiment of fears and insecurities she had refused to confront? Emboldened, she embarked on a journey inward, practicing mindfulness, embracing meditation not as an escape but as a means to illuminate the uncharted territories of her psyche. Each night, she fortified herself with protective visualizations, cocooning her essence in light and setting intentions of courage and clarity. Time flowed, and the nightmares ceased. Yet, beneath the tranquility lay an undercurrent of anticipation. She sensed a culmination approaching, a convergence of self that she both dreaded and yearned for. When the moment arrived, it was with a serene inevitability. The veil between realms parted gently, and she found herself once more in the luminous expanse of the astral plane. The atmosphere was different, charged not with foreboding, but with possibility. "Come forth," she called, her voice steady, reverberating with authority. From the ambient glow, the entity emerged, not as an ominous shadow but as a mirrored silhouette. Approaching, it stood before her, the hood no longer concealing but framing a reflection of her own visage. Understanding blossomed. The confrontation was not with an external force, but with facets of herself long neglected. "I see you," she spoke softly. "I acknowledge you." The mirrored figure nodded, a silent accord passing between them. Integration, not eradication, was the path to wholeness. As they stood united, the surroundings brightened, the astral realm responding to the harmony achieved within. Evelyn awoke with a tranquil smile, a sense of profound peace enveloping her. The shadows that once loomed had been embraced, their power transmuted into self-awareness and strength. Embracing life anew, she ventured beyond her sanctuary. The city, once a daunting labyrinth, unfolded as a landscape of endless opportunity. Connections blossomed. Experiences enriched her tapestry of existence. The towering edifices of New Arcadia transformed from oppressive giants into guardians of collective ambition. Her explorations continued, now tempered with humility and respect for the delicate balance between seen and unseen worlds. Wisdom guided her steps, and the fear that once bound her had been alchemized into a source of empowerment. One twilight, as the sun cast its final rays in a blaze of amber and rose, Evelyn stood atop a hill overlooking the sprawling cityscape. Whiskers purred contentedly at her feet, the epitome of serene companionship. A gentle breeze carried the distant sounds of life, an urban symphony harmonizing with the rhythmic beating of her own heart. In that moment, she felt an unshakable connection to the intricate web of existence. Somewhere, in the liminal spaces where reality and dreams entwined, a shadow watched, not as an adversary, but as a guardian spirit born of her journey towards self-realization. "Thank you," she whispered. Her words a benediction carried on the wind. Evelyn turned to descend the hill, each step a testament to the transformative power of embracing one's inner depths. The city welcomed her return, a vibrant tapestry to which she now knew she unequivocally belonged.